Chapter 18, The Essence of Art. Art is magic, literally. It's just that there can be confusion on what magic really is. Writer and graphic novelist Alan Moore believes both magic and art are, quote, the science of manipulating symbols, words, or images to achieve changes in consciousness, end quote. Don't believe him? Try not to think of a polar bear. I dare you. I bet that you can't stop thinking of a polar bear right now. By crafting my words in a specific way, I have achieved a change in your consciousness. The correlations go on. As Moore puts it, quote, a grimoire, for example, the book of spells, is simply a fancy way of saying grammar, end quote. To cast a spell is literally to spell out a word. Have you ever seen those movies with cults that have those sacrificial circles? There is a bunch of geometry drawn out around and within the circle. These symbols are all part of magic's toolbox. Moore argues most of the magic being used today is in the form of commercials and media. Instead of trying to expand the conscious experience of their audience, magicians and artists alike are trying to inspire a desire within you to buy a can of Coca-Cola. Some commercials are just beautiful. They are amazing. They can be inspiring. Though the end result is to get you to buy something, I can still admire the beauty of the craft. If you have ever played Dungeons & Dragons, played other certain video games, or know your history, you may be familiar with the Bard. Bards are poets, musicians, and storytellers. When it comes to what character you choose to play in a certain game, some classes come to mind. You have your warriors, wizards, necromancers, and bards. When I was young, I had no idea how a bard belonged in a band of adventurers. A sorcerer would shoot fireballs at their enemies. A warrior would swing their mighty axe. A bard would play the flute. The bard was usually a support character that would enhance the abilities of his team or weaken the enemy. As I learned more about what art can achieve, that skill set started to make sense. Why do we have bands play at sporting events? Why do we have cheerleaders? Do they have an impact on the outcome of a game? I imagine that many band members and cheerleaders believe that they do. Their act of art could be an inspiration to the players in a way that enhances their performance. What about a simple mass booing that occurs to the opponent's team? It is one utterance of a simple symbol. But does it work? Moore goes on to say the following, quote, the bardic tradition of magic would place a bard as being much higher and more fearsome than a magician. A magician might curse you. That might make your hands lay funny, or you might have a child born with a club foot. If a bard were to place not a curse upon you, but a satire, then that could destroy you. If it was a clever satire, it might not just destroy you in the eyes of your associates. It would destroy you in the eyes of your family. It would destroy you in your own eyes. And if it was a finely worded and clever satire, that might survive and be remembered for decades, even centuries. Then years after you were dead, people still might be reading it and laughing at you and your wretchedness and your absurdity. Writers and people who had command of words were respected and feared as people who manipulated magic. End quote. You are an artist. You use magic. If you are reading this or someone is reading it to you, then you know how to cast your own spells. Whether it is through speech, sculpture, drawing, painting, or any other kind of symbol manipulation, you have the power to change someone's consciousness. With this in mind, we can redefine for ourselves what art really is. It is the most direct form of communication we have available. You may not know what I am feeling and thinking. I can use art to directly influence your conscious experience, so perhaps you could understand my viewpoint with a little more clarity. Art can also be used to confuse and destroy. You should be wary of such attacks. The best defense against a spell is to make sure you are in balance. A person who is out of sorts is more susceptible to manipulation. Understanding the role that art plays in the changing of consciousness is essential for what is going to be discussed next. There is a crisis we face. It is the crisis.